I'm just realizing that over the past 3 months, my hair has changed drastically 3 times. Nah. Hello to the internet. My name is Montgomery, and we're here today to talk about the things that make you say, "Who even am I?" So I've decided I wanted to do a series on empathy, so I'm going to cover some topics and tools and thought processes around what it means to build empathy and have empathy and express empathy to people. And that is going to start with what I'm calling perspectives. I'll probably end with the video actually talking about empathy in depth, but just as a brief kind of starting point, I will express some thoughts on what empathy is before I move into perspectives. So, empathy is going to be... Actually, let me look up the working definition. So, empathy is defined as the ability to understand and share in someone else's feelings, different than sympathy, which is more of an observation, usually comes with a, "I'm so sorry you feel that way." It's very distancing. Sympathy is not necessarily a bad thing, but when you're looking for actual connection and to be there for someone, empathy is a much more useful tool. Sympathy is going to put a wall between you and that person, whereas empathy is going to close the gap and bring them closer. So Brene Brown actually has a really, really wonderful explanation of that in a TED Talk, and it is drawn into a cartoon. I'll put a link in it below. It's actually a really great video, so you should go watch it. So if we're working towards empathy, being able to understand and share in other people's emotional experiences so that we can better support them and be a friend and a loved one to them, the tools that we are going to use to build those little skill sets and be able to be available when they need us are really important. So one of the most challenging of those, and probably the most important, is going to be perspectives. Having the ability to change your own perspective into someone else's. Changing your perspective is difficult for two reasons, in my opinion, or current thinking. And that's because it's not only difficult, we're inherently selfish. We're going to be looking at the world through our own eyes, through our own experiences and our own biases, but it's also really difficult to know what another person's thinking and feeling. And even as much as we may know them as a person, you can never really know what's going on in their head. So it comes down to really listening and digging in that context instead of assuming that you understand what they're going through. So it just takes a lot of effort, and it takes practice to be able to do it readily. And then it can also be very difficult in situations where you may have a difference of opinion with the person or just not a lot of exposure to the topic that they're talking about. So listening becomes extremely important at that moment. And I guess sort of folded in with that first point, it's also very difficult because sometimes we're not going to be very inclined to challenge ourselves and our own viewpoints on the topic, to lean into someone else's experience when it's something that we maybe value and our own opinion of very highly. So that can happen across a lot of different fields, but if it's something that you personally identify with, and the person you're trying to listen to has a very, yay, upstairs neighbors, the person you're listening to has like a very opposing opinion or viewpoint on what you're talking about, it can be very difficult to keep yourself open to what they're talking about. But it's also extremely important to be able to do that. That is the only way you can actually reach in to find empathy and to find a place where the two of you can listen to each other. It's not always about really agreeing. It's not about changing the other person's mind. It's about understanding where they're coming from. So I think that's the big difference there, is you're looking for understanding, to respect where that person is in their journey, what they're moving through, and make them feel like they're seen in the place that they're in. much more so than like trying to find compromise or working towards a cohesive viewpoint. That's a different process. That would be moving in a different direction. Typically, empathy is most important when a person is in crisis and you're really trying to be there for them in the hard time that they're having. And that's not necessarily a place where two people are going to be coming together to problem solve. It's where someone is hurting and the person is showing up to help them sit with that pain, basically. And that's why in those situations, empathy is so much more important than sympathy, because sympathy will often leave the person who's in pain feeling judged if they have sympathy expressed at them in those moments. With a little bit of exploration into what perspectives is, the biggest and most important tool I could advocate for learning empathy is listening to stories. The easiest way to do that is to read books. Books are wonderful in so many ways, but they're also just filled with rich characters and detailed stories, and just you can find a story arc on anything that you're interested in, all of these different journeys, and people are writing about just so many great things, and you can challenge yourself, you can sit with something that you're comfortable, but the most important thing is when you're reading, you're really disengaging from your own experience and moving into the footsteps of someone else's life, and you find so much compassion and interest in their own strifes, in their own life, and it has nothing to do with you. And that process, that practice of removing yourself from the situation and just listening to what's going on really helps when you're trying to translate that into your own life. And listening to the people that you're talking to, taking in the information, and trying to remove yourself, your own ego, the way that you think things go, out of the situation. I struggled with that a lot for a long time, but when I started making those connections, when I heard other people talking about it, it made it easier, because I've always really enjoyed books and I read a lot, and I was like, oh, it's like reading a book, it's listening to a story, it's not about me. And it really helped me pull back my own interest out of the situation and try to actively engage in being empathetic towards the person I'm listening to. So, yeah, that's why I think perspectives are really important. I think they're very effective. I think it's a really good skill set across really your whole life. It's not just in trying to connect with people, it helps in the workplace, it helps in school, it helps with family relationships. Being able to step aside from your own goals and listen to where the person's at is not only effective at making them feel seen and heard, it helps you have better language to discuss with them about mutually beneficial things that you can work towards, because you know where they're coming from and what they want, and you know where you're coming from and what you want. And it's easier to find compromise in those moments because you have more full knowledge about what's going on, instead of trying to like spearhead and bull in a china shop your way to get what you want while you're not really worried so much about the other party. So, I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. I think it's beneficial to all parties involved. And one of the most painful things in life is feeling unheard by the people that you care about. So if we could all just be doing more practice to make sure that's not happening to our loved ones, why not? If you like the video, give it a like. If you like what I've been doing, please subscribe. I release videos every Tuesday. If you have ideas on things you'd like me to talk to you about, please comment below. I would love to be talking about things that you want to hear, and I really want that to start, please. And as always, take care of yourself. Okay, bye.